Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are in Joshua chapter 7. Now, Joshua has three prime directives. Bring the people into the promised land, conquer the promised land, and then divide the promised land up among the 12 tribes or sons of Israel. So he has already brought the people across the Jordan into the promised land. He has had his first conquest. By the time we get to the end of the book of Joshua, he would have fulfilled his prime directive, his command from God. Now they're going to kind of suffer, I guess, as sometimes we can get prone to kind of overconfident, and they're going to not understand. They're going to suffer a defeat, but they're not going to understand why. And let me just say this, because I'll probably again have to say this over and over again as we move through the Bible. Sometimes the narrative focuses on certain things, so we don't have all the details. So, like for example, if as we were going to study here, they have a defeat, and let's say several people died, 1,000 people died, and if you just read this story, you think, man, was that fair? But what's sometimes not given in terms of information is that there are a lot of people that sin in the camp. So when God uses one thing to judge maybe one sin, he's also taking care of some other things as well. Okay? So my point is, it's not always, since keep in mind, like when you remember when we was in Numbers, it was told about Balaam. And so Balaam, it looked like Balaam did what God wanted him to do, and as far as the prophecy is concerned, he did. But we learn later, okay, that Balaam counseled Moab that caused Israel to sin. All right, let's. I say that because sometimes it looks like, man, these people, some innocent people, got killed. Well, they may not have been as innocent as you think, and that's my point. The narrative is focusing on, as we're going to see, one of the main reasons why they got defeated. And one of the things was overconfident. And they got a little, hey, they're feeling good about the victory over Jericho. So let's get into it. Chapter 7, verse 1 says, the Israelites, however, were unfaithful regarding the things set apart for destruction. Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zibdi, son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, took some of what was set apart, and the Lord's anger burned against the Israelites. Now, this is sort of setting up the story, right? This is setting up the story. Okay, verse 2. Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth-aven, east of Bethel, and told them, go up and scout the land. So the men went up and scouted the land. After returning to Joshua, they reported to him, don't send all the people, but send about 2,000 or 3,000 men and attack Ai, since the people of Ai are so few. Don't wear out all the people there. So about 3,000 men went up, but they fled from the men of Ai. And the men of Ai struck down about 36 of them and chased them from the outside the gate to the quarry, striking them down on the descent. As a result, the people's heart melted, and the people became like water. So they kind of got, wait a minute, we got whipped by these people, right? And it wasn't that great. In other words, they just thought, we're just going to, just in a couple of thousand people, right? Verse 6. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell before the ark of the Lord with his face to the ground until evening, as did the elders of Israel. And they put dust on their heads. O Lord God, Joshua said, why did you ever bring these people across the Jordan to hand us over to the Amorites for our destruction? If only we had been content to remain on the other side of Jordan, And I'm going to say is, whoa, watch it, Joshua. Watch it. Watch the attitude there. Right? Verse 8. What can I say, Lord? Now, I will say this. Remember, Joshua is getting ready to get some information that's going to humble him. Right? In other words, God, we could have stayed over Joshua. We could have stayed on the other side of Jordan. If we were going to come over here to defeat us, it's almost a natural response to just start laying blame. And in this case, you don't have all the information. In other words, how about ask for the information first? Verse 8. What can I say? Lord, now that the Israelites has turned its back and has run from its enemies, and the Canaanites and all who live in the land hear about this, they will surround us and wipe out our name from the earth. Then what will you do about your great name? Now this is kind of interesting since God has already given them victory. Okay. Verse 10, the Lord said to Joshua, stand up, why are you on the ground? Israel has sinned. Now right there, that's information that humbles Joshua. Like, oops, right, okay. He said, they have violated my covenant that I've appointed for them. They have taken some of what was set apart. They have stolen, deceived, and put the things with their own belongings. This is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They will turn their backs and run from their enemies because they have been set apart for destruction. I will no longer be with you unless you remove from what is set apart. Go, consecrate the people. Tell them to consecrate themselves for tomorrow. For this is what the Lord and the God of Israel says. There are the things that are set apart among you, Israel, and you will not be able to stand against your enemies until you remove what is set apart. In the morning you must present yourselves tribe by tribe. The tribe of the Lord selects is to come forward, clan by clan. The clan the Lord selects is to come forward, family by family. And the family the Lord selects is to come forward man by man. The one who was caught with these things set apart must be burned along with everything he has, because he has violated the Lord's covenant and committed an outrage in Israel. Now, if I am the man, you would think, let me confess now and throw myself on the mercy of God. But he doesn't. Verse 16. Joshua got up early the next morning, and he had Israel come forward tribe by tribe, and the tribe of Judah was selected, and the clans, he had the clans of Judah come forward, and Zerahite clan was selected, and he had Zerahite clan come forward, heads of family, and Zibdi was selected. Then Zibdi family came forward man by man, and Achan, son of Carmi, the son of Zidai, and the son of Zerah, the tribe of Judah was selected. So Joshua said to Achan, my son, give glory to God and the God of Israel, and make confession to him. And I urge you, tell me what you have done. Don't hide it from me. Now, he's kind of in a rock and a hard place, because whatever he says, right, he's going to be uncovered. Verse 20, Achan replied to Joshua, it is true, I've sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. This is what I did. When I saw among the spoils a beautiful cloak from Babylon, 200 silver shekels, a bar of gold weighing 5 shekels, I covered them and took them. You can see for yourself, they are concealed in the ground inside my tent with money under my cloak. Now, he took a lot of money. He took a lot, didn't he? He really, really took a lot. Yeah, he took a lot. Okay. Now, what's kind of interesting is that, notice verse 20, he says, I have truly sinned against the Lord God of Israel. So he is confessing, but only after, right, he's kind of been pointed out. Verse 22, so Joshua sent messengers who ran to the tent, and there was the cloak concealed in his tent with the money underneath. They took the things from inside the tent and brought them to Joshua and all the Israelites and spread them out in the Lord's presence. Then Joshua and all of Israel took Achan, son of Zerah, the silver, the cloak, and the bar of gold, his sons and daughters, his ox, donkey, sheep, his tent, and all he had, and brought them out to the valley of Achor. Joshua said, "Why have you troubled us? Today the Lord will trouble you." So all of Israel stoned them to death. They burned their bodies, threw stones on them, and raised over him a large pile of rocks that remain to this day. Then the Lord turned from his burning anger. Therefore, the place is called the Valley of Achor to this day. Now, again, a lot of people may have a real trouble that his family was burned. Well, yeah, it's going to be something you have to take up with the Lord. But yeah. Now, as I said too, remember there's a lot of things that, again, even with that, who were those people? Were they innocent people? His family? And I will say, this is the earthly judgment, okay, that was brought upon them. I don't know for sure if it's an eternal one. Okay. All right. Chapter 8, verse 1. The Lord said to Joshua, "Don't be afraid or discouraged. Take the whole military force with you and go attack Ai. Look, I've handed over to you the king of Ai, his people, city, and land. Treat Ai and his king as you did Jericho and its king. You may plunder, spoil, livestock for yourselves. Set an ambush behind the city." So now he's saying, now you can go and take the land, this city. So Joshua, the whole military force, set out to attack Ai. Ai. Joshua selected 30,000 fighting men and sent them out at night. He commanded them, "Pay attention, lie in ambush behind the city, not too far from it. All of you be ready. Then I and all the people who are with me will approach the city, and when they come out against us as they did the first time, we will flee from them. They will come after us until we have drawn them away from the city, for they will say, 'They are fleeing from us as before, while we are fleeing from them.' You are to come out of your ambush, seize the city, and for the Lord your God has handed it over to you. After taking the city, set it on fire. Follow the Lord's commands. See that you do as I have ordered you." So Joshua sent them out, and they went to the ambush site and waited between Bethel and Ai, to the west of Ai. But he spent the night with the troops. By the way, what is interesting about this, remember, this is a historical document, and some of this would be studied, and we're going to see some of these military campaigns studied and rehearsed later on. So, verse 10, Joshua started early the next morning and mobilized them, and then he and the elders of Israel led the troops up to Ai. All those who were with him went up and approached the city, arriving opposite Ai, and camped to the north of it, with the valley between them and the city. Now Joshua had taken about 5,000 men and set them in ambush between Bethel and Ai to the west of the city. The military force was stationed in this way: the main camp to the north of the city, and the rear guard to the west of the city. And that night Joshua went into the valley. When the king of Ai saw the Israelites, the men of the city hurried and went out early in the morning, so that he and all his people could engage Israelite in battle at a suitable place facing the Arabah. But he did not know there was an ambush waiting for them behind the city. Joshua and all the Israel pretended to be beaten back by them and fled towards the wilderness. Then all the troops of Ai were summoned and pursued them, and they pursued Joshua and were drawn away from the city. and not a man left in Ai or Bethel who did not go out after Israel, leaving the city exposed while they were pursued in Israel. Then the Lord said to Joshua, hold out your sword and hold out your sword in your hand towards Ai, for I will hand the city over to you. So Joshua held out his sword towards it. But when he held out his hand, the men in ambush rose quickly from their positions. They ran, entered the city, captured it, and immediately set it on fire. Oh, come on. My thing is, oh, come on. Verse 20. The men of Ai turned and looked back, and the smoke of the city. Okay, the men looked back, and the smoke of the city was writhing towards the sky. They could not escape in any direction, and all the troops had fled in the wilderness and now become the pursuers. And when Joshua and all of Israel saw that the men in ambush had captured the city and the smoke was rising from it, they turned back and struck down the men of Ai. Then the men in ambush came out of the city against them, and the men of Ai were trapped between the Israelite forces, some on one side and some on the other. They struck them down until no survivor or fugitive remained. But they captured the king of Ai alive and brought him to Joshua. Come on, verse 24. When Israel had finished killing everyone living in Ai who had pursued them in the open country, and when every last one of them had fallen by the sword, all of Israel returned to Ai and struck it down with the sword. The total of those that fell that day, both men and women, were 12,000, all the people of Ai. Joshua did not draw back his hand that was holding the sword until all the inhabitants of Ai were completely destroyed. Israel plundered only the cattle and spoil of that city for themselves, according to the Lord's command that he had given Joshua. Joshua burned Ai and left it a permanent ruin, desolate until this day. He hung the body of the king of Ai on a tree until the evening, and at sunset Joshua commanded that they take his body down from the tree. They threw it down at the entrance of the city gate, with a large pile of rocks over it, which remain to this day. Okay, I just want to make one note about, notice the body hanging on the tree, and then after they hang the body on the tree, they have to take it down by evening. This is what happened to Jesus on the cross. Okay, kind of a symbol too. Verse 30. At that time, Joshua built an altar on Mount Ebal to the Lord, the God of Israel, just as Moses, the Lord's servant, had commanded the Israelites. He built it according to what was written in the book of the law of Moses. And this is probably Deuteronomy, which is kind of a summation of all of the other commands. It says, an altar of uncut stone, on which no iron tool has been used, and they offered burnt offerings to the Lord and sacrificed fellowship offerings on it. And there on the stones Joshua copied the law of Moses, which he had written in the presence of all of Israel. Again, probably the book of Deuteronomy. Verse 33. All Israel, foreigners and citizens alike, with the elders, officers, and judges, stood on their side of the ark of the Lord's covenant, facing the Levitical priests who carried it, as Moses, the Lord's servant, has commanded earlier. Half of them were in front of Mount Gerizim, and half of Mount Ebal to bless the people of Israel. Afterwards, Joshua read aloud all the words of the law, the blessings as well as the curses, according to all that was written in the law, the book of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses had commanded that Joshua did not read before the entire assembly of Israel, including the women, the little children, and the foreigners who were with them. Now again, this is, as I said, probably the book of Deuteronomy. And notice he read it to the children as well. Okay. He read it to the children. All right, guys. Chapter 9 in the next study. I'll see you then.